Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here. A lot of you have responded to the warm-up, which is great. I'm loving some of the stuff you're saying. If you haven't done the warm-up yet, go ahead and do that. Again, you can do it in private chat or the group chat. I'd say generally speaking, when I have these warm-ups, put it in the group chat unless you really want to keep it private between just the two of us. Just because there's a lot of you in here, so it takes a little while. I can read it easier in the group chat. And hello to everyone, those of you who are still coming in. I'm going to try to say hi to everyone as they come in at least until class starts. I can't promise after that. But hello to all of you. Great to see you all. Okay, so Carmen says the quote means your imagination will be free and creativity will as well. Yes, especially in this case for us writers. Hopefully you guys think of yourselves as writers. It'll give us freedom not only reading books but also writing. Can really open things up as well. So really good, thank you. I'm just going to look at a couple more responses here. I love some of these you guys are writing. These are great. Make sure too, once you've responded, that you give me that green check just so that I know you've done the warm-up. And a lot of times the warm-ups will be something like this, where either there'll be a quote we're looking at or a question for you. And the idea is they're always related to what we're going into. So that's why, you know, get your mind going, get you thinking about what we're going to be talking about for the day. So one thing, I love a lot of you have been saying, you know, once you learn to read, it opens up your imagination. You've got that escape outlet with reading. Once you've learned to read, you can't unlearn it, so it's always there for you, right? Another thing is just kind of some background. I don't know if any of you know who Frederick Douglass is. Does anyone can tell us a little bit about Frederick Douglass? I don't know if you guys have learned anything about him. To be able to read, you are free because you're able to escape to fantasy world. Exactly. Frederick Douglass was a slave. He was an escaped slave. I believe he escaped. He was a slave, and then he was no longer a slave. I'm pretty sure he escaped. Yeah. And the lucky thing for him and for us is that when he was a slave, his master's wife taught him how to read. It was actually illegal at that time to teach your slaves how to read because, of course, if you can read, that lets you learn things that they don't want you to know. So she did actually teach him how to read. Because of that, he was able to get free. He was able to get an education after that. He did become an abolitionist. He fought really hard for freedom of other slaves. And it was because he knew how to read that he was able to do that. That, I think, is really strong and powerful because I think sometimes we forget the value of being able to read. For him, that ability to read helped him to have the freedom to become free and to fight for others to get that freedom. So it's still true today, even if you're not a slave, which, technically slavery is illegal in this country, right? Not saying that it isn't still around in some senses, but it is illegal in this country. But even still, if you don't know how to read, or if you don't read, even if you know how but you don't do it, people can take advantage of you. Governments can take advantage of you. The powers that be prefer you not to read because then they can tell you whatever they want and you'll believe them because you have no way to prove otherwise, right? So reading does provide you with a freedom because you can think for yourselves more. So Yes, always read every word of your contract. I know, lots of words, fine print, and they just say, here, sign here. Really important to read it and know what you're getting into, right? Exactly. So good. I'm loving all the comments, everything you guys have said. So we'll start off. Do I have a volunteer who would like to read our norms for today? And then I'll take another volunteer to read our learning target. So Natalie will read our norms. Do we have a volunteer for our learning target? Okay, we'll see. But at this point, Natalie, go ahead and read to us our norms. And then Kara, thank you.
We will be here. We will be kind, and we will be engaged.
Perfect. Good. Give Natalie applause for that. Very good. Yeah, again, and I said this will probably be the same thing every day, but it'll just be a good reminder. I want you here when you can be here. We've talked some, and I'll talk again. I know a lot of you have multiple classes at the same time. I understand that. That's just part of the nature of things, especially seniors. You have a lot of different classes you got to get in. If you have another class at the same time, that's fine. Come when you can. If you can't come, that's fine. Watch the recordings. Just make sure you're doing everything. You have 3 classes at this time. That's crazy. I know. And they tried really hard to schedule it, but it's just the nature of the beast. And a lot of you, especially if you are seniors, most of what the classes you still need to take are electives, and there's only certain times that electives are. So you might have double ups. I know that. I understand it. I'm going to try real hard to make sure you can still do everything you need to, even if you can't actually be in the live sessions. Having said that, of course, I'd love you to be in the live sessions as much as you can so we can have great conversations. But if you can't be here, that's fine. But when you are here, I want you to be here, if that makes sense. Which kind of goes with that third one, you'll be engaged. You'll be here, paying attention, listening, engaged in the conversation, because that's the whole point of having these sessions live instead of just watching the recordings, is getting to engage. And we will be kind. Again, remember, that means being kind to ourselves as well as others. So no insulting anybody in this class, even yourself. We are all going to have positive, kind words to say to everyone, okay? Okay, so our learning target for today. Kara, go ahead.
I can determine the theme or central idea of the text.
Okay, perfect. I can determine the theme and central idea of the text. So today we're going to be looking at a text and looking at what it means. Pretty simple, straightforward. But okay, before we jump into that, though, yes, good job. Sorry, give you a round of applause too, Kara. Thank you. I do appreciate you guys who jump up and volunteer for that. Before we get into today's thing, I just want to go over some reminders, and a lot of you have already done this, but don't forget, first of all, to do the getting to know each other assignment, and then the diagnostic. There was a little confusion. A couple people asked about the diagnostic. Yesterday we talked about the Google Docs. For the diagnostic, you're not going to necessarily share in your Google Docs. You're just going to turn it into the regular OHS. Okay, so you go into the class. If you look on the side, the course plan is right here, and it will show you these are both due by Friday. Click on the one, it'll take you to a link to go to ClassKick, and you can do that. The other one takes you to the Dropbox where you're going to be turning in your diagnostic. Oh, the reader gets money, huh? Are you going to send the money, Ashley? Because I can't afford to. Sorry, I'd love to, but yeah, that's not happening. So your diagnostic, you're going to turn in there. And what I'm going to do is I'll read through it. I will grade it on the rubric that we're going to be discussing. And I will give you just a little bit of feedback. With other assignments that we do, I'll try to get you more feedback. We'll be working with Google Docs and being able to provide you with more. But for this, I'm going to read it. Emma, I may not have actually graded that yet. I know I haven't got through a whole lot yet of the diagnostics. So check on that. If you have a grade in the class, it may just be from the first one, from the Getting to Know You assignment. I've gotten through some diagnostics, but not all of them. But I will try to leave you some. Did you get an A on the diagnostic, or did you get an A in the class because you have your Getting to Know You assignment done? Not sure. Check on that. So any questions on these two assignments? Also, a reminder, if you started your Getting to Know You assignment and didn't get to finish it, you can still go in and do that. If you remember the name you put in initially, put in the same name, it'll take you back to where you left off. If you put in a different name, you'll just have to start over, which is fine, because I can see, oh, there's two, you know, from Samantha. I'll know which one to grade. So either way is fine. And sorry, Samantha, you have a question. What is your question? Selena asked if we can work ahead. At this point, I'm going to say no, because I'm still getting everything worked out. This is a new class for me, so I don't want you to start working ahead and then miss, you know, if I change my mind on what we're doing. So, but you can keep writing. Remember, you can write stuff that you can use for NaNoWriMo. So in that case, you can work ahead. Hopefully that answers. Okay, yeah, Samantha, let's see. Okay, yes, Samantha, go ahead and just send that to me, and I'll take a look at it. Have you done NaNoWriMo before, Emma? You're not excited? Well, I've done it 4 times now. We'll talk about that when we get closer, but. Kylie asks, what do we submit? For the first one, for the Getting to Know You, there's nothing you have to submit. You just do it, and I can see that it's done. For the diagnostic, there's a spot to actually turn it in. And Emma, hopefully this time it won't be so tedious. Yeah. So yeah, the Getting to Know You one, if you go through the stages, it automatically shows me what you've done and what you're working on. For the diagnostic, turn it in to the Dropbox, and I'll grade it that way. Yeah, you'll have to turn it in as a Word doc, I think. So if you do type it up in Google Docs, which is fine, and if you want, you can share that with me as well. But for this one, you're going to need to download it as a Word document and then upload it to the Dropbox. Okay, so I want to remind you of those, but we've got some stuff to go through today, and the time goes so quick, so I want to jump on the next thing. If you do have a question about those, though, just let me know. So today, and actually for the next couple weeks, we're going to be talking about what I call the Power 6. And this is something I took some things that I learned and combined it together to make. This is basically the 6 traits that make for good reading. So the 6 things you should do while you're reading, and the 6 things that make for good writing. Obviously, in this class, we're going to be focusing mostly on, you know, what makes good writing. But we're going to talk a little bit about what makes for good reading, because as writers, of course, you need to be readers, right? The more you read, the better your writing becomes. And the deeper you read, the more you understand how someone else wrote, the more you can learn how to write yourself. So what we're going to do then is each day we're going to go over 2 of these, one of the reading traits and one of the writing traits, and kind of see how they are combined. Today, I want to talk about the first ones, question and ideas. So when you're reading, as good readers, you should be asking questions as you go. Hopefully you guys do this. If not, I suggest you do it. If you do it, maybe even do it more. But when you're reading something, as hopefully we know, just because something is written doesn't mean it's necessarily true. Okay? Just for example, just because it's written and posted on the internet doesn't mean it's true, right? When we read something, we're asking questions. Is this true? Why is the author saying this? What is their motivation? What are they trying to get us to believe? Do we agree with them or not? So you're asking questions like that, in addition to other questions like, what's going on? What's going to happen next? So your mind, as you're reading, should always be asking questions. As far as writing goes, we're going to be looking at 6 things that make for good writing. And each of these you're going to be graded on. The rubric that we're going to use is based on all 6 different traits. So you'll get scores for each of the 6 different things. So I'm not going to be just saying, oh, do you have good conventions? Is your spelling correct? That's going to be part of the grade, but only a 1/6 of the grade. The whole grade is going to be, do you have strong ideas? Are they well developed? Is your piece well organized? Do you have correct spelling and grammar and stuff? Do you have a strong voice to your writing? Do you use good word choice? And is the writing fluent? Does it flow? Does it sound good? Okay, if it asks you to record your voice and you can't, just put a note on the Classkick on that page that the recording isn't working. That's fine. So today, I want to look at question and ideas. So we're going to read a piece, and as we're reading it, I want you to kind of be questioning, what is he saying? Do I agree with it or not? What's going on? What is the main idea of this piece? Okay? Does that make sense? So I'm actually just going to read this piece to you, and as we're going, I want you to kind of question in your mind what he's saying, whether or not you agree with it. So this is from, it's an essay written back in 1729 by Jonathan Swift. This version is abridged to make it hopefully at least a little more easy to understand than the original was. But the essay is called A Modest Proposal for Preventing the Children of Poor People in Ireland from Being a Burden to Their Parents or Country and for Making Them Beneficial to the Public. Okay, so that's what this essay is about. So think about that, and I'm going to read the essay to you, and then we're going to talk about whether or not you agree with it, what his proposal is, and whether or not you think you agree with it, okay? So again, this is by Jonathan Swift, written in 1729. And just so you know, Jonathan Swift lived in Ireland, so this is about people in Ireland, specifically poor people and their children, and how to prevent them from being a burden to their country and their parents. It is a sad object to those who walk through this great town or travel in the country when they see the streets, the roads, and cabin doors crowded with beggars of the female sex, followed by 3, 4, or 6 children, all in rags and asking every passenger for money. These mothers, instead of being able to work for their honest livelihood, are forced to spend all their time begging for food for their helpless infants. I think it is agreed by all parties that this large number of children in the arms or on the backs or at the heels of their mothers, and frequently of their fathers, is in the present state of the kingdom a very great additional sadness. This is why I have thought for many years upon this important subject. It is true, a child just born from its mother may be supported by her milk for a year with little other nourishment. And it is exactly at 1 year old that I propose to provide for them in such a manner as instead of being a burden upon their parents or wanting food and clothing for the rest of their life, they shall contribute to the feeding and partly to the clothing of many thousands. I have been assured by a very knowing American that a young, healthy child, well nursed, Is it a year-old, most delicious, nourishing, and wholesome food, whether stewed, roasted, baked, or boiled? I do therefore humbly suggest that of the 120,000 children in this country, 20,000 may be reserved for breeding. The remaining 100,000 may, at a year old, be offered in sale to the person of money throughout the kingdom, always advising the mother to let them suck plenty in their last month, so as to render them plump and fat for the good of the table. A child will make 2 dishes at the entertainment of friends, and when the family dines alone, the fore and hind corners will make a reasonable dish, and seasoned with a little pepper or salt will be very good boiled on the 4th day, especially in winter. Okay, let's avoid the comments at this point. Just listen, okay? I know it's hard. I have already computed the charge of nursing a beggar's child to be about 2 shillings per year, rags included. And I believe no gentleman would mind giving 10 shillings for the carcass of a good fat child, which, as I've said, will make 4 dishes of excellent nutritious meat. Thus, the mother will have 8 shillings in net profit and be fit to work till she produces another child. Those who are more thrifty, as I must confess the times require, may slay the carcass, the skin of which, artificially dressed, will make admirable gloves for ladies, and summer boots for fine gentlemen. Butchers may be well assured of not wanting, although I would rather recommend buying the children alive and dressing them hot for the knife, as we do roasting pins. I think the advantages by this proposal which I've made are obvious and many. First, as I've already observed, it would greatly lessen the number of people in the country. Secondly, the poor tenants will have something valuable of their own to help pay their landlord's rent. Third, the constant breeders, besides the gain of 8 shillings per annum for the sale of their children, will be rid of the charge of maintaining them after the first year. It will increase the care and tenderness of mothers towards their children when they are sure of their annual profits instead of expenses. I can think of no one objection that would possibly be raised against the proposal, unless it should be argued that the number of people will thereby be much lessened in the kingdom. This I freely own, and indeed was one of the reasons I suggested it. I promise, in the sincerity of my heart, that I have not the least personal interest in endeavor to promoting the necessary work, having no motive other than the public good of my country. I have no children which I propose to get a single penny, the youngest being 9 years old and my wife past childbearing. So now, with your polling tools, I want you to answer this question. Do you agree with his proposal? This will help the poor children of Ireland, right? So give me a green check if you say, yes, this is a good proposal. Give me a red X if you say, no, I'm not so sure about this. Okay, so I've got a lot of responses, but not everyone. Make sure you're responding in the polling tools so I know, do you agree with him or not? Do you think this is a good proposal, or do you think maybe it's not such a good plan? X is for no, green check for yes. And I'll always use the green for yes and the X for no if I'm asking yes or no questions. Yes, Jonathan Swift, it's a modest proposal. There's more to the title, but if you know that much, you've got it. Okay. Your mom thinks it's a good idea? Okay, well, I want to talk to your mom, or maybe I don't. Okay, so most of you did say, no, you don't agree with this proposal. And just to clarify, I know some of you are like, wait, what? This is satire. When Jonathan Swift wrote it, he was writing it kind of as a joke. He does not really think that we should eat babies. In case you didn't catch that, that's what he was suggesting, was that, you know, we had poor people. Why don't we just eat their babies, right? He didn't really mean that. I don't mean that. I don't think we should eat babies. He didn't think we should eat babies. He was kind of joking about, well, we need to find a problem. How about this, right? Jonathan Swift, he was a satirical writer back in the 1700s, so yeah, he didn't really mean it. The reason I like to read this piece at the beginning especially is to get you thinking about asking questions as you read, right? Because I have had people who've read through this and they're like, yeah, sounds good. Chances are, I assume that when, you know, they don't necessarily totally understand it, which is why they say, sure. Hopefully, most of you don't say, oh yeah, I think we should eat babies, because no, we shouldn't. Lots of reasons. One of them, as some people said, is it is kind of a disease waiting to happen. Beyond everything else, cannibalism is actually very unhealthy because it spreads disease that way. So yes, it is definitely one of the most disturbing. I will agree with you there. Just trying to wake you guys up in the morning. Make sure you're aware. But again, the real point was just to remind you to make sure that you're asking questions as you read, right? Also, though, you know, we talked about making sure it's clear what your idea is. Do you think it was clear what Jonathan Swift's idea was, other than, you know, maybe his writing's a little difficult to understand, but everything was kind of focused towards the ideas, right? You're not hungry? Glad to hear that, Taylor. We should eat the rich. Well, I don't know. I don't think we should eat any humans, to be honest. Your main question was, what the heck? Well, good. Then you're asking questions. That's the key point here, right? I don't know if I want to know that, Natalie. Chelsea, you should see a picture on the board. Okay. The main purpose for this, as I said, was just kind of we were going over the traits. And the first, one of the most important traits, when you are reading anything, and I don't care if it's reading something for school, reading something on the internet, reading a story, whatever, you should be asking questions. And one of the big ones is, do I agree with this or not? Just because it's in print, hopefully you guys know by now, doesn't mean it's necessarily true, doesn't mean you have to agree with it, right? Okay, so yeah, I'll go back to the questions at the end. So questions, and you can just put these in the group chat. Why do you think it's important to make sure you understand what you read? And question 2 is, what does this have to do with creative writing? Why in the heck did Ms. Kelso bring this up in our creative writing class? So anybody want to add or comment on either of those 2 questions? Or if you want to get on the mic, just raise your hand. You can do that as well. It was certainly creative. Make sure if you do get on the mic, you raise your hand first, just so we know. Yeah. Sheber says, if you don't understand, you might get the wrong idea than intended. And it could be real dangerous if you say, oh yeah, I agree with that, because you thought you understood. And then all of a sudden, like, really? You agree with eating babies? You're like, oh wait, no, that's not what I thought. Yeah, Samantha says, people might think you support eating babies, and you don't want them to think that, right? Hopefully. When you're writing, you need to make sure readers understand where you're coming from, right? So if you do try to use something like satire, you do want to make sure that it's real clear that that's what it is, right? don't understand what's being said, then you can interpret something different. Exactly. It's important to understand so you don't miss important details. Yeah, and you might say, oh, this sounds good. Here, you should read this too, and send it to other people. And everyone's like, really? You really think this? Other list here. And somebody's on the mic. So if you're on the mic, go ahead and turn off unless you want to volunteer to say something. So don't misinterpret the meaning. It's important to understand what you read so you don't agree with something you don't really understand or support. So you can read or respond to it properly, right? If you don't understand, you might get the wrong idea. This lesson helps you understand how to write in a disturbing point of view. Well, there is that too, Angelina. On The Walking Dead, there's a group that eats people, and they end up being poisoned by eating somebody that's bitten by a zombie. Never eat people, man. It's disturbing and crazy. Good advice. Thank you. Yes, The Walking Dead teaches you all sorts of things. Some good, some not so good. It's important to pay attention while you're reading so you know what the author's actually saying in their argument, right? You can really learn from reading unless you understand it, and you misunderstand what others mean. Exactly. Some reasons for this happening with creative writing. Lesson has to do with creative writing because it's creative, that's for sure. It shows different types of writing, true. So people understand what you really believe in. To make clear writing and not make someone have the wrong idea of what you really mean, right? So if that wasn't what he was trying to say, obviously he has to be careful, right? Because that's what we got from it, right? Helps the importance of clarity on your writing, right? So people aren't picking up the wrong thing. You need to be clear with the point throughout your story. It is creative writing. It is. And again, it was intentional. It wasn't like he was trying to get us to eat babies. He was trying to be sarcastic. Okay. The lesson has to do with creative writing because it shows the importance of communicating a message clearly. When you're writing, you need to make sure your reader understands where you're coming from. So, you guys are getting me distracted with Walking Dead. When you're writing, make sure that it's clear. Make sure that it's something that people understand. One of the things that I get a lot of times from younger writers, and probably older writers too, but is the kind of the attitude, well, the reader will understand. Keep in mind, hopefully, what you guys write is something that will outlive you. This was written in the 1700s, right? What they thought in the 1700s is different from what and how we think now, right? So you want to make sure that what you write is something that people are going to understand, even if they are not, if they don't live in the same time period as you, in the same country as you, with the same situations. So you really want to make sure that it's clear where you're coming from and you're not assuming anything about your audience. Sometimes you understand your writing, but no one does. Okay, and maybe we can work on that. Fatima, I was kind of working on, okay, what can I add to make it clear? And sometimes you don't know. One of the struggles that I have is sometimes in my books I want to put in little clues, but I don't want it to be too obvious. And I will, have somebody else read it and go, did you get that? Was that too much? Was it not enough? Because it's hard to know what someone else is going to get from it. And that's why we use peer editing, right, to help us figure those kind of things out. You disagreed right away. That's good. Yes, you don't want to sign the wrong contract. Exactly. Reading is important for that, right? I've had students who say, well, I don't need to know how to read. I don't need to know math because I'm going to be a famous, basketball star someday. Or I'm going to be a famous actor, singer. Well, you better be able to read your contract. You better be able to balance your own checkbook so you know where the money is coming from and where is it going. Because if not, we always hear stories about famous people who lose all their money. And that's probably part of why, is because they don't have enough knowledge to keep track of what's going on. And other people may not be as ethical about it, right? And there's math in basketball too. Yep. And you have to read lyrics. Exactly. You guys know. You guys are so smart. Yes, exactly. You need to know this stuff, right? And you don't need to necessarily go to college, Emma. That's fine. There's a lot of things you can learn without going to college. But you do need to have the basics of how to read and how to write and how to do math, because otherwise you could be taken advantage of. And I don't want that from any of you. Favorite way to deliver foreshadowing is through characters. Some favorite common sayings that end up being literal. Ooh, I like that idea. Well, maybe you just don't know the math in the game yet, Bailey. Maybe you'll find out more as you go. I don't know. There's a lot of math in sports. There's a lot of math in music. Music is all math. Plus, as I said, you need to be able to do your own finances. It's just important. Okay. So any questions on our activity today? Any questions on what you need to do? This week is kind of getting you started learning about the Power 6 and giving you a chance to get your diagnostic and your getting to know you done. That's all of the assignments for this week. Okay, so just make sure you do those. And okay, question about how to turn in the assignment. Let me think about that one, Angelina, for the NaNoWriMo. I may be okay with like any sort of fan fiction, but I got to decide. So give me a bit to think about that. Actually, I'm thinking yes. I'm just going to say yes. As long as it's your own writing. That's the big thing. I want you guys to have the experience of writing something and making it your own. Okay, so it can be based on someone else's characters, another movie, another TV show, whatever. My daughter, a couple years ago, did NaNoWriMo. She did the 50,000 word novel based on the movie It and on Pennywise. So, but it was a great experience for her. She learned a lot about writing. So I'm going to say that's okay.